Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive. Hey, it's AZ with the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast, and you're listening to episode 154, where I sat down for the second Sunday in a row and talked to my good friend Zig Markowski. Zig and I talked about a bit with his history with injuries. We talked a little bit about returning to duty, even when it seems like it's not going to happen. We talked about mental health. We talked about taking care of yourself after returning from an injury. I know you're going to love to hear his story. Thank you so much for listening. Quick note, please get registered for the Women's Tactical Human Performance Summit. It's in Oklahoma City. It's in May 9th. Some of the best speakers. I would put these speakers up against anyone in the world. Some of the best speakers in the world are going to be talking about topics related to women in tactical. So that's our public safety personnel and our military personnel. Get registered for that. And I think that's all I have for you today. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. So I bought this sound booth and it's giving me claustrophobia, so I'm probably going to send it back. But I also had to take my mic. It used to be on this little thing that hung down.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fit in here anymore. And so I realized that I had my mic on backwards from the whole time I moved here from Illinois. I've been talking to the wrong side of the mic. And so that's why my sound quality has been bad. And it's a huge room. So can I hear you talk?
Yeah. So check, sibilance.
You sound fantastic.
Okay, good. Hopefully there's no echo.
No, I don't hear any echo. My friends, I'm here 2 Sundays in a row now. We've had 2 Sunday podcast dates. Great to see you again, Zig.
You too.
I am all about transparency and full disclosure. We had a great podcast episode and the sound quality wasn't great. So Zig is nice enough to record again with me. So thank you. Do you feel like Groundhog Day?
No.
No. Okay. Well then here's what I'm going to ask you. Who is Zig?
Zig is an old man now on a young man department.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, let me see real quick. I'm 46, married to Jennifer, a line of duty disability, retired police officer, father to Ziggy, who is going to be 25 this year.
Shut your face.
And my little girl is going to be 16 in a month and a half. I'm sorry, 17 in a month and a half. She's already 16. And my stepson is going to be 20, I believe, this year.
How did we get so old?
All those trips around the sun.
It's very profound of you. I want to know also what sets your soul on fire.
Oof. My family, honestly. Everything I do is trying to support them and honestly try not to be a dick. I found that the less sleep I get and the longer I work, the harder that's becoming. So I'm working on that.
Self-awareness is a superpower.
Yeah. The problem is a lot of times one of the guys I got hired with, he's a deputy chief now. Yeah. You know him well. Bobby has said, you're one of the most self-aware people I know. Problem is you lack the ability to change anything.
That might be the soundbite for the podcast episode. Oh, snap. Okay.
He's not wrong. It's, again, a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. Wait, what does your cup say? Dad? Best dad in the world. Okay. I mean, I think you're probably in the running for that for sure. And I want to know too, because sometimes people say, I don't know. I'm probably not changing the world, but I do think you're changing the world. So how are you doing it?
When I was a new guy, a couple of the older guys then always told me, always try to leave this place better than you found it. And I try to do that most every shift. Obviously, you're not always going to succeed in that, but the best you could do is try. As my mama always said.
Your mama.
Yeah, so whether it's trying to get the crews out training or trying to teach the young guys and gals, the importance of being active in the union, being active within the department, joining subcommittees and being involved versus just showing up to work every shift, which, while there's nothing wrong with that, but some of the individuals have found through the years that when it comes up time for promotional screenings, the individuals that just showed up to work every day don't get the chief points that they thought that they were going to get because all they did was show up to work every shift. They didn't do anything extra. And we all know the bosses love extra. So
and luckily for you, you are extra.
I'm a lot of extra.
We didn't talk about this last time, but I love this transition into one of the things that you are very active in, which I always like watching from sort of the Facebook sidelines, is the honor guard.
Yes.
So how did you get into that actually?
So I'm prior military. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit, but excuse me. Just always seemed like the right thing, when there's a line of duty death is obviously the big goal or the big use of the honor guard. So Illinois has it's a union run. So it's the International Association of Firefighters of the Illinois Association. They have their own honor guard and it's statewide unit broken up into districts. So whenever there's a line of duty death, be it somebody killed, in a crash, a fire, or a line of duty illness, typically cancer. We've had a bunch of those lately, and we got another one coming up, and it's actually today, I think. So they activate the state honor guard. So you'll have ideally a couple hundred extra firemen showing up in Class A's. And really what we do is, one, is a show of force for the families. Two, a lot of us, with the amount of training that we do for this unit, is that we'll get there early and we'll help train the affected department on how to stand casket detail, flag work, how to salute sometimes. I mean, really anything you could think of, make sure their uniforms are right and match. And pretty much anything you could think of is what we're there as a supporting role. We don't roll in and just take over events. We're there to help. So, yeah.
And you also have a lot of practices wherein sometimes you send me pictures of you eating donuts to try to get a reaction out of me. And it works. All right. The reason we're chatting again today is that one of my listeners wanted to know about how do you come back from an injury and what do you do? You've gone to PT and you're feeling good, maybe better than before. How do you maintain that? And you and I were having a little conversation on the Instagram regarding my post about this coming up. And you said you should probably interview me. And I said, yes, I probably should. And the origin of this comes from in 2020, I did a podcast episode with Bridge Athletic with Ryan Carroll. I don't think the podcast actually exists anymore, but we were talking about injuries on the podcast, and I talked about a particular firefighter that I managed that seemed to get broken a lot. And the soundbite from that podcast was, do better, Zig. So Zig's already been on a podcast basically just as a supporting character, but now he gets his own podcast. So while you start talking, I'm actually going to pull up your resume of injuries so that I can help you. But I'm just going to let you start from, you graduated from high school, you went into the military, and then the injuries started to accumulate. Ready, set, go.
Well, I'm that guy. As a kid, I always got hurt too. So this is a literal lifelong thing. Varying degrees of clumsiness, along with trying to do things that I thought I could do and found out I couldn't. So, I got banged up a bunch as a kid. I think the one year my mom said I was like 10, I ended up in the hospital like 6 or 7 times in the emergency room for various stuff, to the point where my parents were afraid that DCFS was going to get called on them. And I was like, no, I legitimately did all this to myself. So, so this has been a whole life thing. So in the military, I did 4 years in the Navy, active duty, and then 6 months active reserve before I started going to paramedic school. So the big injury I had in the Navy, I had the doctor called it a lower back sprain, which I didn't think was possible. Most likely it was just a bad strain with muscle spasms and stuff. So I was 20, I think, with that one. And then they all just started piling up after that. So as most of us know, once you hurt your back, unless you're one of the lucky ones, you're going to have just perpetual back issues pretty much the rest of your life. So that's me.
That's you. And so something occurred to me as you were talking. You said you were clumsy. You got hurt a lot. You got 6 times in 1 year. And there's this condition. I'll call it a condition. It's called hypermobility, meaning like you can take your thumb and twist it all the way back to your arm. If you pull on your neck skin, it pulls like way out like a cartoon character. Your elbows and your knees hyperextend. And many times people call it double jointed, but those people also have really poor motor control and they tend to be clumsy. Do you think there's any chance you were hypermobile as a child?
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
You were just clumsy.
Just clumsy.
Brain didn't connect to muscles.
Oh, okay. My brain is just an ADD fueled machine. And the problem is I think my body just can't keep up with the synapses.
Some people, their mouth can't keep up with their brain. No, their brain can't keep up with their mouth. Zig's brain can't keep up with his body. Is that it? No, body can't keep up with the brain.
Well, there's definitely a mouth issue there too. You've known me long enough.
Zig is running his mouth and getting hurt. That's the problem. Okay. So in this first back sprain or strain in 1999, it looks like from the injury resume, what was your course of treatment? And do you feel like you were ready to go back to work? Was there any rehab, anything with that?
I don't remember rehab. So most of your friends that anybody you run across, I know in your fitness circle, you probably run across veterans quite a bit. Ask them about the quality of healthcare that they got while they were in. Unless they got lucky, it was a sliding degree of trash. So
well, ask them about the healthcare they get now from the VA sometimes.
Oh, it's even worse, to the point now where it's criminal. But we could do. I can recommend you somebody for that for another podcast if you want to get into that. Luckily, I didn't have to dip into the VA pool when I got out.
Okay, so I'm all over the place now. I think I have ADD. So you're not on TRICARE. You're on your agency's insurance and care plan.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So in 1999, strain your back. No physical therapy, but like a muscle relaxer situation. Just, pat you on the butt, go home for a couple weeks, and then just come back. That was the care?
That was exactly it.
Woof. What did you do in the Navy exactly?
So I was a flight deck guy. I fixed jets. I was what's called an Aviation Electronics Technician, or a tweak. We were designated as like the super nerds because when I went to my tech school, there's some super nerds that go through that training. I'm talking like playing Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, the board game stuff, which I'm not judging.
That doesn't seem like your jam, though.
No, and these kids would like dress up in costume while they were playing it too, and like you'd walk into the lounge area when they're all doing this, and you're just like, okay, I'm gonna go out and go skate. Instead, I was hoping to watch a football game or a baseball game because the barracks and the base I was at, that phase of training, you didn't have TVs in your room. There was one TV in a common lounge between 2 buildings.
Please do not destroy my fantasy. Sounds not nice, but I don't know what other word to use. Please do not destroy the movie that's playing in my head right now of you being on the flight deck and doing the whole thing with your arms down in the lunge position and the jets taking off. Did you do that? Please tell me you did.
I did a variance of that.
Okay. Did the
So
Top Gun music play in your head
yeah,
while you did it?
something. Yeah, especially when you were new. I mean, I love that job. I mean, it was hard. You know, you're working anywhere from 12 to 18-hour shifts sometimes, depending on the cycle you're on. But like, very hard work, but it was awesome. It was fun, especially, you know, being as young as I was, you know, running around on a flight deck. And back in the 90s, you still had F-14s up there, still had the Prowlers up there. So you had a mixed flight deck still versus now where it's all just Hornets and now the F-35s.
I got to go down another rabbit hole. The new Top Gun movie.
Yes.
Fifth generation fighters. Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
They basically have stealth and hypercruise and advanced sensor integrations into them.
I think I need to watch the movie again.
It doesn't hurt.
It never hurts.
Never
I just
hurts
watched it
to
on a
watch
plane.
the movie again.
Watch the movie again. Okay, so you successfully served your country in the military, got out, you were in the reserves for a bit, went to paramedic school with the intention, I'm sure, of getting hired on a fire department. How was that process, by the way?
With the testing?
Yeah. Did you test a lot or?
No, I'm one of the lucky guys. So most of your listeners, I'm sure, are still working. They know across the country we have a hiring crisis. It's not even an issue. Back when we were testing, you know, you'd have 200-300 people show up for a test. So it was hard. Yeah, it was hard to get on. I only took 2 tests.
Me too.
I got hired. I was number 2 on the list I got hired on, and I was number 3, I believe, on the other one I passed on, and that was it.
Yeah, me too. Some people, I feel for them. They test for years. So you got hired on your agency, which we will leave your agency unnamed, and you know, got started in the traditional probationary sort of fashion. How was the injury situation once you got started?
It was fine. I mean, I was young still, even though I had done 4 years active, and then, you know, I was in class for 2 years to get all my hiring certificates, you know, my certifications. I still got hired. I was 23.
You were fresh. I got hired at 33.
Yeah, I was definitely young. I mean, even now still, I still got 3.5 years to retirement until I turned 50. And, you know, I'm north of 22 years on already.
Damn.
So
it looks
go back to your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was fine. You know, I was still very active. You know, young helps. It very rarely hurts. So, yeah, I went quite a bit, you know, a couple dings here and there, but nothing crazy. At that time, my agency had a policy where if you told your officer you tweaked something, banged something up, you were going to get looked at.
No matter what.
Which was ridiculous. Yeah, even if you, you know, like strained a hamstring, you know, something minor. You know, I had knee issues since I was younger. Nothing severe. You know, I sprained my knee when I was a kid playing baseball. And every now and again when I would slip or turn a certain way, my knee would swell up. You know, not a big deal. It'd be sore for a couple of days. And that'd be it. But if it happened at work, I got mandated to go get it looked at. So there was a lot of those, we'll call them nuisance injuries, where you wouldn't even normally pull paper on them, but at that time you were forced to pull paper and go get them looked at.
We cannot emphasize enough the power of young, because you can fall out of a tree and be like, I'm good. Hit your head on a rock. I'm good. And now I tie my shoes wrong and I can't stand up without assistance. It's bullshit. I
dare you to go on a swing set.
Oh, God.
And even think about jumping off the thing.
No. My bionic knee is like, no.
No, the stuff I used to do, you know, me and my friends and even my brother, it was insanity.
Picture this for a moment. Monkey bars. Okay, we had this thing where we would hang by our knees from the monkey bars, So our heads down, we would hold onto the side, and then we would simply flip our feet down and land. No big deal, right? Then we would have the one where you would swing about 3 times and then flip from inertia down and land. I can't remember what these were called, like penny drop, cherry drop, something like that. And then there was one where you were crouched on top of, so basically sitting on the bar, you're holding onto it, you roll forward, catch yourself by your knees, inertia, one swing, and drop. I used to do this on recess. What the hell?
We used to see who could jump the furthest off the swing sets.
Oh my God. Where was our self-preservation? Holy shit.
They had those new out of the package knees.
Right. And they just get high mileage. They're like tires. I wish we could just change them out periodically. Well, I did, but I don't love it. You can. It's not great. So it looks like on your resume in 2006, the knee kind of came to a head, if you will. Tell me about that.
So that was a pretty minor thing, all things considered. My knee had just started locking up every now and again. So I went in, got it looked at. The doctor said on the MRI looked like I might have a meniscus tear. So they went in for exploratory. Structurally, my knee was fine. But what I had was fibrous tissues growing off the head of my femur, which I guess everybody has. It just grows off the lining of the bone. Mine had grown long enough where it was getting wedged into the knee joint and would cause my knee to lock up. So they went in.
It's gross. I'm going to be honest. It's gross.
Yeah, they went in. It was like a 30-minute procedure. They just cleaned out all the tissue, and that was it.
That was it. Back to work in what?
Oh, what was that? 2 months?
Okay,
yeah,
so
about
PT.
8 weeks. Yeah, PT for that. Yeah, it was about 2 months.
And when you came back, did you feel like you were as good as new? Let me define new for you. As good as Zig could be when you got back, or were you maybe still deficient?
I was still deficient, definitely. My lieutenant at the time was a guy that I respected greatly. Yeah, he's a chief on another department now. Ended up being my BC for quite a while. Kept me out of discipline issues on several occasions because he knew me very well. My crew was real helpful. They're like, you know what, we'll just have you drive the engine for a few shifts until you feel like you're back. I was close, call like 80-85%. It was just still very achy. Mm-hmm. The strength was back in the leg, but it was just still perpetually uncomfortable for a while. So just wrote it out for it was like 2 weeks. And then, I was fine.
Do you feel like you were returned to work because maybe the doctor didn't understand, or the physical therapist didn't understand the gravity of the situation and what you really needed to do? Or do you think there was another reason? The
other reason was probably me.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, it was probably me going, no, I'm good. Let's go.
Let's go. Do better, Zig. Okay. All right. Back to the resume. It looks like you had a good run of maybe close to a decade without a major injury. And then we see a neck injury.
Yeah.
Just saying the word neck injury makes me heebie-jeebie, but please tell in detail about that.
All right. So the neck injury was, I never had a prior neck injury that I was aware of. I'd never gotten seen for bulging discs or anything like that, or never whiplash from a car crash, none of that stuff. So I was working out on shift and I was doing incline dumbbell bench presses and just felt my whole upper back just lock up, mid-set. Dumped the weights and caught my breath after a while. Went back out in the living quarters where the other 2 guys were getting dinner ready. And I told them, I'm like, hey, I got to call the BC. I got to go home. My back just locked up on me. And the senior guy was over. He's like, no, dude, you need to go to the hospital, get that looked at. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's just a back spasm. No big deal. And he goes, well, turn around and look at me. And like I told you on the last one, it was like the old Batman costume where it was all the cowling and the headpiece was all one piece, and I just turned my whole upper body because I couldn't move my head. And he goes, "You either get in the engine and let us drive you over to the hospital, or we're calling the ambulance over here." So went in, got some X-rays, got an unholy amount of pain meds that really didn't do anything to touch it, and got discharged probably like 5 or 6 hours later, with instructions for a follow-up. So I go to OC Health, which was our policy back then, and they just kept sending me for X-rays. So what ended up happening, I had a fairly rare herniation where my herniation went straight posterior. It didn't go laterally, so I didn't have any neurological symptoms down one arm or the other. So they're looking at the X-ray. They're like, "No, there's nothing wrong because your vertebrae are all nice and straight. So just go do some PT for a couple of weeks, and we'll see how it goes." So I did PT for a week, and out of the first session, kept making it worse. Go back to OC Health. I'm like, "Look, this isn't working. Something's wrong. I don't know. I'm still on spasm, but something's wrong. Something doesn't feel right." They're like, "Oh, you just, try PT. We'll give you a different criteria." Go back to PT again. I think I made it 3 or 4 sessions that time before I quit. And I think you know me pretty well. I don't quit. And went in and I said, "Screw this. I've had enough. I'm going to see my own doctor." Went to go see a doc. He sends me in for an MRI, but because comp was paying for it, they send me to an open air MRI, which is like the equivalent of a Etch-a-Sketch MRI.
That's amazing.
So I go in for the follow up with the surgeon, the first guy, and he's looking at it and he's like, there might be something here. I can't really tell. He's like, "What I'm looking at, I don't know if surgery will fix this. I want you to go get a second opinion." So I had looked at this other doctor from another group, and I'm like, "Well, what about this guy?" He goes, "Absolutely, go see him." So I make the appointment. I go in and see him, and he looks at the same MRI results, and the comp nurse is in the office with me at that time. And this guy starts yelling at the comp nurse. And it was one of the greatest things. Like that became a core memory of mine, of him yelling at the comp nurse. And he's like, "Look at this guy, and he's swearing at her, not at her directly, but he talks like us. He throws expletives in with the sentence."
I do not.
You try not to. You're better than most of us.
It's terrible. I have a running tally at the academy. I've now made it 0 days since swearing. Continue.
Nice. So he demands her, like, "Look, he's going into my MRI in 3 days. Your job right now is to get it approved." And so I went in, got that done, came back for the follow-up the next week after that. And he's like, "Yeah, you got one bulge and 2 herniations." So I forget what I wrote down on this sheet. I think I had bulged 3, 4 and herniated 4, 5, and 5, 6.
Actually, it does not say exactly
Okay.
on the resume I'm looking at.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So he's like, "Yeah, you need," the way this doctor worked on his protocol. So just in case anybody runs into this from an ortho, this guy was a spinal ortho. He used neck injections, so vertebral injections, as diagnostic tools. So the way his criteria was, if you got the injections and it took the pain away even for a little bit, he was going to cut you because then surgery will work. Whereas if you did the injections and there was zero relief at all, he's not going to operate because there's probably something else besides, quotes, just the disc. So the pain went away for about 6 hours post-op. So he's like, "All right," made the appointment for me to get on the table. I got cut. So the original injury happened like the first shift of January. So it was like the 2nd or 3rd of January. Now we're in August. So I've been off work this entire time, on light duty, but off shift. And made the appointment, got the surgery done, and was cleared full duty 4 months later post-op.
I know this was a workers' comp injury, so this is satire right now, complete satire. But
Okay.
imagine you had hurt yourself off duty and you went through this and you were able to get 6 hours of relief from an injection. I know you well enough to know you would have gone skydiving, motorcycle riding, and tried to learn how to do tumbling in those 6 hours. Wouldn't you have?
If I was still in my 20s, I may have. But by this point, I was in my, I think I was like 36, 37 years old.
Ancient. Surgery in August. Rehab, I'm assuming intensive rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And return to work in approximately...
It was 4 months post-op.
4 months. Did you already say that? Did I zone out for a second?
It's okay. I do it all the time.
I probably need more caffeine. All right. So it looks like things went maybe not so great. Maybe okay for a couple years. And then we start talking about your left shoulder. Please share with the listeners. What did you do?
So the shoulder, that was not comp. I mean, most likely I probably could have linked it to it under a presumptive injury, but I didn't have a single event to go, oh, shit. You know, it's just I noticed working out that my arm was getting progressively weaker. What finally made me go get it looked at was, it was a combination of two things. One, I used to be able to military press like 155 pounds before the neck injury, to the point where now I couldn't press a 20-pound dumbbell with my arm. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I should probably go get this looked at. There's something going on here. And then, like an idiot, still waited a little while. So then
why would you go immediately?
Yeah, because I'm an idiot. Because then I'll be off work.
Right.
So my wife and I had gone fishing at an area pond where they rent John boats. And I went to go row us from one area to the other. And I looked and realized I was rowing us in one giant circle because I didn't have the equal strength in both arms to pull the boat. So I think it was like within the next day or two after that, I made the appointment to go in and get looked at. And yeah, I had a slap tear and just all that other jazz. But what ended up causing it was I had two big bone spurs on the head of my humerus. And it was just shredding my shoulder socket apart. So yeah, that was a labral repair, RC repair, and bicep tendon resection.
How was the PT?
Awful. I think it was worse than my neck, honestly.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So then you come back from your first shoulder surgery, foreshadowing, your first shoulder surgery, and then immediately, if not sooner, hurt your neck again. How did you do that?
So my agency has a policy where if you're off work for 3 months or longer, you have to go through what they call retraining. So it's fairly basic stuff like basic entry firefighter stuff. Get you brought back up to speed on any policy changes you may have missed, EMS, continuing education, EMS, stuff like that. I'll withhold my opinions on that policy and the procedure for it. There's always a better way to do things. So, the union's trying to get that changed, but the village is going to do what they do. And they're digging their heels in on it. But I was in the last week of that retraining, and one of the crews I was detailed out to for that day, they were doing ladder work with one of their candidates who was riding a struggle bus, getting it up. And I had also taught at the fire academy for quite a while in the area. So the one guy, the lieutenant who also worked at the academy, and, this Mike knows what he's doing, especially he knows how to train new guys. He comes upstairs to grab me and he goes, hey, this kid's not getting it. Can you come give me a hand? Maybe I'm just not getting through to him. So long story short, go down there. We're just doing, it's just a 24-foot extension ladder, nothing crazy. So I'm working with the guy throwing ladders and stuff, and I felt fine. There was no issue. The next morning I woke up and my upper back was tight and my neck was tight. And I'm like, my neck, was tight again. Not a big deal. My doctor had me stay with a pain management clinic at that time, so I had some muscle relaxers because I would go in for trigger injections as I needed them. So took a Valium, went to bed, woke up in the morning, it was worse. I was like, oh shit, I know what this is. When I woke up that second day, I had neural deficits all down my right arm. So I was a muscle spasm through the shoulder joint into the bicep, and then from the back of the tricep down into the forearm structure, and 3 of my fingers were numb.
Those signs and symptoms are not good.
No.
So what did you do to yourself?
So I called the surgeon, and he goes, "Can you come in for an MRI today?" I said, "Yep, I'll get in there." And I couldn't hardly drive because I couldn't move my neck. I couldn't get comfortable in a seated position. I was constantly fidgeting more than I am right now.
What?
Go in, he does the MRI. They call me, that was like a Monday night. I think they called me Tuesday afternoon. He's like, "I got to get you on a table." He goes, you completely, I had herniated again above and below my fusion. So I was like, oh shit. I'm looking now, I'm positive my career's over. I'm 38 years old, I think. Ish. Yeah, about that. Because now I'm going to have two or three, depending on what was going to happen, concurrent vertebral fusions. And they're not going to let you go back to being a fireman after that.
Oh, yeah. NFPA has big opinions about that. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So I had filled out now, and here's the thing you talk about coming back to work. I work in a department where the guys and girls are really good helping each other out when you get hurt. So with my shoulder, because I was still coming back from my shoulder, I had done a bunch of trades and backloaded them into the following summer. So I'm looking at going off, and I owe 20 people trades.
Oh, wow.
And now my neck is locked up bad again. I'm looking at my career being over, and I'm filling out my pension paperwork because I'm positive this is it. So the surgeon tells me, "Yeah, we're going to get you in. I'm just waiting for a date, and I'll let you know in a day or two, call back." And then the COVID shutdown happened. So all the surgical centers were closed. So I sat on my couch for the next 5 months, just swallowing pills. Not in a negative tone. I took everything appropriately, and thank God I never had any addiction issues. But yeah, I was taking pain pills. Every 5 hours, I had an alarm set on my phone because I had to. So I did that until it was like summertime. They started opening stuff back up again. And they called, they're like, "Okay, they're opening the surgical center again. You're in the first 10 people that we're going to get on the table." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I call work. I let them know. And then it was like, no joke. The next morning I woke up and I could feel my hand again. And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." So I waited to hear back from them. I started weaning off the medications a little bit because I'm like, hey, maybe the Neurontin finally decided to start working. I don't know. So over the course of a few days, I weaned off a bunch of the meds and it didn't come back. So I called the doctor's office and I'm like, "Hey, here's the deal. I think it's done. I think it's self-resolved." And they're like, "Okay, well, what do you want to do? You want to go back to work?" Or I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Okay." They signed a return to work notice and I went back to work and started my 3 weeks of retraining again.
And I think that's what people fail to understand, that in some cases, given enough time and patience, and we are not patient people, but given enough time and patience, your body will heal itself. I don't know a ton about spinal anatomy and discs, but it is my understanding that they sort of will resorb, or I don't know if that's the right word. Help me with the word. Get sucked back in where they belong.
Yeah, I don't know. You're smarter than me. You're the one with the master's degrees.
Oh, shoot, we're screwed. So you went back to work triumphantly, might I add?
Yeah, I was very happy. I was woefully out of shape because there was no physical therapy or nothing to work myself back in. It was just I went from being on the couch to back at work.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
I'm remembering now your fitness eval that year.
Yeah, it was awful.
I'm not quite sure if you wore the shorty shorts for that one, but maybe not. I don't know.
Definitely not for that one.
I cannot with those shorts. So you get back to work and you think, we got to talk about the helmet. Sorry.
Okay.
We got to talk about the helmet. Tell them about why the American helmet is not going to work for you anymore.
So I'm one of the dorks that wears a Euro helmet. And for the record, I hate it too. It's ridiculous, but I'm still able to work. So the reason why I switched was when I came back from the first neck injury, we're doing some training at acquired houses and wearing that, like I think we had the 1010s. Within like 10, 15 minutes of having that on, I was developing tension migraines. And it wasn't a one-off. It was every single time. So between being at work and then again teaching at the fire academy, wearing the same helmet, I'm like, well, what am I going to do about this? Like I can't work with this. So I went to my admin and I went to my doctor and talked to him about an alternate helmet and found out that the 1010 was the lightest traditional helmet that was available, at least at that time. And one of my retired friends had suggested, well, why don't you look into the Euro helmet? There's a department in Indiana, I forget which one it was, where they had switched over to that because they had had a rash of neck injuries without prior injury, very similar to mine. And they thought that maybe it was related to the helmets. So I go back to the bosses and they were all for it. And then I ran into issues with the village where they were not buying me a new helmet. And that dragged out I went back and looked after we talked last time. It was nearly 6 months.
Oof.
That I was battling this. And it was to the point where, like, on calls, if I didn't have to have my helmet on, I was carrying it. So if we were going in on a fire, as soon as we came out I'd put it on going in, and I'd take it off as soon as we walked out. Fire alarms, I never had it on. I had it with me, but I wouldn't wear it. Like, that's how bad it was. So they went, and my deputy chief at the time had to finally go to the village because they wanted me to buy the helmet myself. And they're like, well, we'll just reimburse him through his check. And the deputy said, no, this is all this kid wants is to come back to a kid. I mean, I was like 40 then.
That's a kid. That's a kid.
Late 30s. And he's like, all he wants to do is come back to work, buy him the damn helmet and knock it off. Excuse me. So they did. And I'll be damned if it didn't work. Those tension headaches were gone. You know, and again, I look like a Lego fireman wearing it. I catch shit every time we go out of town. I got one that I paid for the fire academy. Excuse me. The fire academy bought one for me. I had to pay them back through my paycheck, which I was fine with. Because if you don't see the money, you don't miss the money. So, sure. Yeah, so I had no issues with it. You know, I still got tightness and discomfort every single day to a sliding degree, but I can still work.
You know, you were talking about you weren't wearing your helmet when you didn't need to have it on. And unconsciously, I did that for my whole career. I have 11-inch neck. It's like a giraffe with an orange on the top of it. And the moment I put my helmet on, I start to get a headache. Mm-hmm. And I never thought about it until you just said that.
Yeah.
You're bound. I don't know. What's a helmet weigh? 3 pounds?
I'd have to look it up. I'm not certain.
All right. We don't know. We're making stuff up now. But 3 pounds on top of this pencil is not good.
Yeah. And I know you're doing a voice recording. I have a giant Polish Irish mix skull.
Zig's got a big head.
So it's, one of the top 3 largest skulls on the department. So,
and not a particularly skinny neck either.
It's a lot of stress going my whole life on it, I'm sure.
Yeah, check the podcast photograph. You'll see the head. So you get back to work. It's amazing. You have your Lego man helmet. Things are going great. You're thinking, I am going to cruise through the rest of this career. And then you decide to go to a class.
Yep.
And in typical Zig fashion, something went wrong. Tell us all.
So I took advanced swift water operations. It was remote up in northern Wisconsin. Yeah, super excited because I love being in the water. I was hoping years back to get my dive certificate because I wanted to be a diver, but I was never able to equalize to get down below, I think it was 15 feet. And that really bummed me out because I really wanted to be a diver. And then they started doing the swift water classes. So I'm like, oh, perfect. I don't have to go underwater far. So I started taking those classes. And then we're in the advanced class up in Applegate, Wisconsin, which is in the middle of nowhere. And we're staying at this cabin resort that was closed for this season. It was early spring, like April. And this is still coming out of COVID. So, the gyms were just opening back up and stuff. So a lot of us were somewhat out of shape and definitely out of swim shape. And we're going down the river, doing our refreshing techniques on your swims, your defensive swims, rope throws, all the cool guy stuff. And the thing about moving water is if you're not careful, it'll take your feet out. And rivers also have rocks in them. So nearly everybody climbing out of the river was slipping and falling on the rocks. I'm just the idiot that slipped and fell hard enough that he tore his shoulder apart doing it.
And so you decided to
keep going.
Of course.
Because I thought I just dislocated it, and I was feeling it pop back in. It took I had no use of it for like 30 seconds. It was just hanging limp by my side. But after 30 seconds to a minute, I could move my arm again. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I just dislocated it. It's strained, but if I can move it, it's fine, right? So I'll finish up the second half of the class, the afternoon session, but limited because the instructors are good. And they're like, look, if your arm's bugging you, just kind of hang back a little bit because we were still, again, doing the review stuff. We weren't learning any new techniques yet. So I wake up in the morning after taking a unhealthy amount of Advil the night before, along with quite a few beers at the campfire. Woke up and I'm like, I should probably go get this looked at. So again, I kind of hung back and did like shore support roles for the morning session and called my department during lunch break and got yelled at for not letting them know right away I'd gotten hurt.
Valid.
Ish. So I got ordered to go to an emergency room to go get it checked out. So drove, that was like an hour north up into the UP to find we were right in the middle of Green Bay and I think it was Iron Mountain, Michigan. So I'm not going to Green Bay because screw Green Bay. So I drove up to Iron Mountain, got the x-ray, and of course the x-ray shows nothing, it's in place. Probably just sprained it, I think is what the doc said. But he told me to go follow up with your shoulder guy when you get home. So I do, make the appointment, get in, go for the MRI. And I got the MRI results emailed to me on a Friday. So I'm looking through them and I'm like, see little labral shredding, some rotator cuff shredding, and a little bit of wear to the bicep tendon. So I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I lucked out. I don't need surgery, maybe just a couple of weeks or a month of PT and I'll be fine. So I go back in for the follow-up and I'm talking to my surgeon's PA, who was a really sharp guy. And he's looking at it and he's like, I don't know how he missed this as he's looking through the scans. Yeah, my heart just sank. I'm like, what? He goes, you have nearly a full thickness tear of your subscapular tendons, ligaments, tendon. Yeah. I forget which. My subscap was tore almost completely through. And he goes, we need to get you on a table now before, because if that ruptures, you're screwed. And so, yeah, I'm looking within 6 years, my third fairly major ortho surgery, and I'd narrowly escaped the fourth with the neck the second time. So, yeah, that was to get back to the overall thing of the reason why we're doing the podcast of going back to work. Like, I just felt defeated. I'd fought so hard time and time again to come back. See, I still get emotional a little bit.
As you should.
And, I got to go through this again. I got to go through surgery. I got to go through, and again, like we said at the very beginning, my family, my daughter was quite a bit younger at this time. And thankfully she's spoiled, but she doesn't act like a spoiled little shit. She never gave daddy a hard time about, why can't we go do things? I'm bored. I'd rather be with mom because her mom and I have been divorced for quite some time. She never did that. My wife never gave me a hard time about anything. So I was in a good environment at home to come back, mentally and stuff. But I'm definitely harder on myself, like most of us are. So I'll go in, get yet another surgery, back to work 4 months later, and got promoted. What was it, like a week after I came back to work when I got cleared?
Have you managed to stay injury-free since that injury in Check's notes, summer of 2022?
Yes.
Damn. I want to talk about two things with that injury.
Okay.
The first one, I remember distinctly getting a text message from you about your work hardening and just how dumb it was and how you and then 102-year-old male carrier were doing the same training. And I just want to harp on that for a second. We need to do better. When normal people go to physical therapy, yes, they need to be able to tie their shoes and put a gallon of milk in the refrigerator and hold their arm up to brush their teeth and put their pants on. That's the bar for normal people. But that cannot be the bar for tactical people trying to go back to work. I was so very upset about that work hardening. I'm still talking about it 4 years later. So bad.
Yeah, and the way I got around, not around it, tried to make the best of it. Yeah. I just pushed it, as hard as I could, and did as many reps as I could, or cycles. The reps were the reps, but did as many cycles as I could, running through, because you don't want to come back to work and be a liability. And I had done that prior when I came back after I nearly escaped, getting my neck cut the second time. And I didn't want to do that again.
I lied. I now have two more things that I want to beat up a little bit. And you can actually not comment on this. Maybe I'll just say it. And then if you want to comment, you can.
Okay.
But I'm wondering about, in terms of the policy, if you're off for 3 months, then you have to go through the retraining, and no one likes the retraining. I wonder if that does encourage a lot of people to come back prior to when they should, just so they don't have to go through the retraining. Question mark.
I think with most of the injuries, if you're going to be off for that amount of time, you're probably surgical anyway. So you're probably going to be off past that 3-month mark anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, I can't really speak to that.
Okay. That was just food for thought, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to talk about I want to talk about the importance of your mental health or the challenges with your mental health when you having one injury is a lot, but having multiple injuries. And I'm sure you're not the only one in the fire service that has had multiple injuries. Let's address the importance of taking care of ourselves mentally.
Well, I think, well, one, your support structure. So again, I mentioned, my wife and daughter. My son's a little older, so by this time he had moved up to Wisconsin with his mom. So it's just me and my wife, and then my daughter when she was with us for the visitation cycles. You got to have, a healthy support structure at home. I didn't, as I said earlier, I didn't come home and get nagged because, you're just sitting on the couch doing nothing, look at everything I'm doing and yada, yada, yada. Even though, you may not be able to physically do any of that. So if you do have that environment at home, I couldn't imagine what that adds to an individual's, mental workload, for lack of a better term. You're already fighting yourself internally take myself, for instance, for being hurt just over and over again. Here we go again. Then have to deal with, negativity at home from that as well. That could just be poison.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. So
Yeah.
Not only potentially getting yourself counseling or talking to your homies at work, but also making sure that your family structure at home is as supportive as possible. That's so important. I didn't even think of that. Wow. Well, we can go two ways here, Zig.
Okay.
I can ask you about your dog, and then we can wrap up, and then I can come back on and talk about the question, the very specific question that was asked, because this is all perfect insight. Or you can hang out with me and add color commentary. What do you think?
I got time.
Okay, cool. First, let's talk about Frankie anyway. I'm sorry. Let's pretend I don't know about Frankie. Do you have a dog?
I do.
Tell me more.
Frankie is a Champagne Lab. He's 5 years old. Is my wife's self-trained service dog.
And my boyfriend. Don't forget that part.
And that's boyfriend.
He sends me things on Facebook and memes via text. We're in a very serious, committed, long-distance relationship, Frankie and I. Okay. So the specific question that my listener said is, you're cleared to come back to work and you feel stronger than ever before. Like, what now? How do you keep that momentum going? How do you, I guess, just make things great once you're back at work? And so I took some notes. And one of the first things that I think is super important is making sure that you're totally ready to come back to work through appropriate work hardening. And I don't know if they use that term in all the states, so let me kind of tell you what it is. You're cleared from physical therapy, but then you have like 4 weeks or 6 weeks, maybe 2 weeks of going in every day for something like, what was yours, Zig? 4 hours a day?
I think it was 6.
6? Okay. And during the 6 hours, they basically just keep you moving a lot of the time. So it's kind of silly, some of it, 10 minutes on the treadmill, 10 minutes on the bike, 10 minutes on the elliptical, a whole bunch of exercises with a yellow rubber band, and then go do these exercises that really aren't that hard and don't challenge you that much, and they definitely don't progress them during the time that you're there. So if we can improve that situation with work hardening and make sure that you are good to go before you get back to work, I think that's step one. Anything to add to that?
No. Yeah, you're right. The stuff, doing the wobble, the metal, the wiggle.
The body blade.
Yeah, the body blade.
Okay. Fine. But do you need to be doing that at 6 weeks?
No.
Okay. I have a story, just like a kid at a fire prevention talk. I had to direct my own PT care when I had my knee replaced, because one of the first activities we did were these little, 4-inch hurdles, and you just have to step over with your stupid knee. And then 2 weeks later, I'm still stepping over the hurdles with my stupid knee. And I'm like, can we make them bigger? Can I do something else? That shouldn't be the way that it has to be. But
Yeah, you're not an 80-year-old grandma with a hip replacement.
I mean, practically, but you get what I'm saying. So, what's the lesson there? We have to advocate for ourselves and we have to educate that staff at the PT because they don't know. They don't know that you need to step up on what might be a 24-inch tailboard. They don't know how much that hose load weighs that you have to get onto your shoulder and be able to march forward with it. They don't know, so you have to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really their fault. They just don't know. The other thing that I said was you have to keep doing the things that got you where you got to. Meaning, when you are off, more than likely you are sleeping every night in your bed for 7 to 9 hours. And when you were off, you were probably eating well. Some people tell me they eat better at the firehouse than they eat at home. That makes me sad. But for those of you that it's the opposite, you have to keep doing those, carrying through those great habits of nutrition. Super important. And then here's the big one. You were exercising no less than 3 times a week, because physical therapy is usually 3 times a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were exercising 3 times per week. You have to keep exercising. You can't come back and just go back to the lifestyle that you were having when you got injured. It doesn't work. So sleep, nutrition, exercise, pay attention to your mental health all of the time is important. And I think that answers the question of what now?
Yeah.
What do you think?
You know, unless you have a career-ending injury, like I mentioned my wife earlier as a line of duty disabled cop. So she had a TBI that she sustained while breaking up a fight and got her head cracked off a concrete sidewalk and has long-term cognitive issues, memory issues, balance issues, and she's got a depth perception. I forget what it's called, but her eyes have a hard time locking on. I mean, she walks into walls and tables and stuff constantly, and she bruises easy. So it just looks like I just beat her constantly.
Oh dear.
Yeah, she went in for a massage the other day, and she's got bruises all up and down the back of her arm from where you could see the massage therapist was working out knots she has. And she had a neck injury from it and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, and she was fighting to go back to work. She tried everything she could and then got outside the window and then realized, through us talking through the year, this is a prolonged thing with her, that the memory issue was, to me, the big one for her not going back to work. I'm like, how can you testify in a case if you can't remember that we just watched a movie last night?
Valid.
Your memory is suspect. You may forget a protocol or God knows what, and that's the light end of it. That's you don't forget something that might get you killed. Or, you forget which street you're on when you're chasing somebody and you just blank on it, and now, somebody's got your gun. So, yeah, there's that. So the career-ending things are one thing. The individuals, and I think we've all worked with them through the years, that go off and maybe they're just tired of working, or, they kind of half-ass PT and they just don't get better. You can't half-ass your therapy. You got to dedicate everything to it if you truly want to go back to work. Now, if you're doing that and you're still having an issue, well, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the guys that just kind of go through the motions. I was going through therapy. I had one guy tell me, like, Jesus, man, what are you doing? Save some for tomorrow, save some for later. I'm like, no, I'm trying to go back to work. I got to get back in shape. I got to get better so I can go back and do the job I love. And he was like, oh. It's like, all right, well, I'm not talking to you anymore because you don't have, the values that I have. You're just here collecting. And that other guy was not a fireman. He was a commercial truck driver. But you got to put the work in, and you got to be mentally strong to know that I might have a setback. this is not going to be easy. I mean, when I was doing my neck therapy, the mental machismo hit, the ego hit, there you go, that's what I was looking at, of trying to do lateral raises and struggling with a 1 pound pink dumbbell, which screw the companies for making those pink. Okay.
It's my favorite color, Zig.
I know it is, but as a man trying to struggling with 1 pound
Pink dumbbell.
deltoid raises with a 1 pound, and you're like, everything's just shaking. You're trying to get it up. That's hard. It's difficult, but you got to keep going, and you got to kind of trust the process. And once you get to the point where you're starting to get your strength and mobility back, then start pushing it a little bit.
And I think it's worth mentioning there is a timeline for tissue healing that we just really can't speed it up. But if we are listening to the therapist and doing what they're telling us to do, we should be able to optimize that. And the other thing worth mentioning is that it's not just your muscular strength that we have to retrain. It's your neurological system. When you had your shoulder injury, I'm assuming you were probably slinged for a fair amount of time with a little roll underneath. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty common. You weren't moving your arm, so your brain forgot how to move your arm. And so you just have to remind your brain how to move your arm. And that's why we make this progress in leaps and bounds. The neurological stuff comes back first, and then the muscular stuff comes back. But there's a timeline, and we have to do everything we can to just optimize the timeline, I think.
Yeah, my surgeon's protocol for the shoulders, I don't remember exactly how long it was before I was in therapy, but it was fast. I think it was within a few days I was starting therapy. And a lot of it was just range of motion, doing the pulleys.
Yep. Or them moving your arm.
Yeah, and them moving it was awful. Like that sucked so bad. But, with the pulleys, I bought one for home, and I've actually loaned it out to a couple other guys that have since had their shoulders done. You could get it for $20 on Amazon. It's an over the door shoulder pulley. Just it's $20. It shows up today or tomorrow. And then
not an affiliate link.
Stick it in a Ziploc bag and throw it in a drawer for God forbid it happens to you again. But I was doing that once they cleared me to do it constantly because I was terrified of having scar tissue build up in my shoulder and just prolonging everything. Because there was a guy on a neighboring department who had his surgery almost the same time I did in very similar circumstances. He had scar tissue build up in it, where they're having to go in and break it apart. And he was off for nearly a year, whereas I was back in just the 4 months. I'm like, I'm not going through that.
No.
So I pushed the mobility stuff because that's an easy passive thing, or it's active, but you're you're not loading weight on it. You're just using your good arm to pull it up. And I liked it. It felt great. Just, get that stretch in there until the therapist got their hands on you. Then that sucked.
Ew. Well, and you also raise a good point because I do believe, I cannot remember who it was, so I can't really give the great example of even what the injury was, but they told me recently, I said, "Oh, are you in PT?" And they're like, "No, my doctor didn't prescribe PT." I'm like, "You had surgery. You need to have PT." And so sometimes your doctor can still say no, but you need to advocate for yourself. If you've had an injury or you've had surgery, you need to ask about PT, and you need to keep asking because it's going to help.
Yeah.
So what did we learn today? Advocate for yourself.
That might be the biggest one that people have a hard time with.
And we could probably do a whole episode on, the workers' comp system. And, well, let's be honest, the whole entire insurance system is broken. But, there may be times when you have to step outside of the workers' comp system in order to get the care you need. So advocate for yourself, get the care that you need, do the good things, keep doing the good things that got you back. Keep your mental health in mind. Ask for help. People are willing to help. And maybe just do better than Zig.
Please do better than me.
All right. If you had a parting thought to leave everyone with, what would it be?
Just keep pushing.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know,
like that.
just that's one thing. You know, I've had a lot of stuff happen my entire life, you know, in my personal life, professional life. Don't give up.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy. Even my sister, she's told me numerous times, like, I don't know how you do it. It's like, I don't have a choice. People depend on me.
That's true. You have a cool family, by the way. I don't know your sister, but I know your brother. He's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. We have a very good immediate family structure.
Yeah. Well, my friend, I think that we can drop the mic and I can send this to Jeremiah and we can just be done. Thanks for
Okay.
hanging out with me 2 Sundays in a row.
Of course, hopefully there's no echo this time. I
Oh
bought
no,
a
it's
fancy
so
mic.
good.
I got everything here, so hopefully it works. And I covered the
It's
drums up. I got the
oh yeah, look
big
at you.
blanket over to the drums, so I did everything I could.
And I have my microphone facing the right direction for the first time in almost a year.
I can't believe you did that.
I can't believe I did that either, but actually I can believe it. My friend Kelly was here staying with me for the weekend. She said about herself, not about me. She's like, I don't even know why people talk to me. I'm just like talking to a sock puppet sometimes. Same, girl. Same. All right, this has been AZ and my friend ZM3, and we are officially out.
Bye-bye.